Let's take a look at some examples. And as we look, I want everyone to know, for me, color is a lifelong battle. It's interesting because I think as you explore and study it, you're never quite comfortable. You're always trying to improve and get better color. So 3 things to think about. I gave you 3 at the start of value. 1, keep your eyes fresh, which we'll go over an example, Joaquin Sorolla. With these concepts in color, sometimes they're you can argue them. You can certainly see one and say, well, no, I see complement. I think this is a triadic. I'm seeing that purple, green, gold combination, even though there's a lot of other colors in this, and it creates this great sense of light. Edwin Austin Abbey, once again, I would say this is more triadic. I haven't seen it in real life. Well, my guess are they go a dark blue, and if they do, then you're kind of even going in the range of, kind of a primary blue-red with some of this yellow. More so, look at how color's used to guide your eye around. Look at all these diagonals in red. Look at the dance that you make with some of these red fabrics. And then this incredibly red shape, almost dead center, but balancing that, because we always follow eyes, with his eyes that pulls you over here to this spot of high contrast. And a very interesting thing about this painting too is he's kept the value down so you don't look as much here. But it's interesting to have a figure of red here. I think it's wonderful for balance, but it's interesting also that his eyes are going off the canvas. Create a little more story, but that's an interesting way to paint that. Now let's look, this is a John Frost painting. Some of the times when you're looking online, the colors are not as true as in real life. This is a photo I have taken. And I think what's interesting about this, the picture I showed at the very beginning, that was this same painting. And it's interesting to see paint application. Look at this, and look at this. And look at that beautiful, clean color. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a full picture of the painting. A lot of times when I go to a gallery or a museum, I take close-ups because the books never have very good quality of reproduction, and I can never get a good close-up. So I'm always taking little pieces of paintings more than anything to see paint application, see how they're using their color. I mean, interesting things like this is a reflection of the water. Look how red that has gone. So let's look at the whole painting if you don't recognize it. And I apologize, it's way too vibrant, the actual one I got off the internet. This is that whole painting. Going back, look how these pieces are painted so beautifully. That one is handled so nice, such rich, clean color. But one thing to take note of is this blue, you can't have different things dominating. That yellow is very vibrant. So take a look at how grayed this blue is. That's really pulled under control to help that yellow. If they're both vibrant, then you don't know how to look. And let's take a look at that. So if I start to paint that blue, which many people do when they first start out, is sky or anything, they're just going, paint out of the tube. But look how that really destroys the beauty in this color. The elegance of the grayness in the blue has really helped that yellow make it even more beautiful. Maynard Dixon. So this is a painting you don't get to usually see. This Maynard Dixon, I was lucky enough a curator took me into the basement with a bunch of other artists. We got to see some paintings they don't usually put on display. But really interesting, if we bring up, even though it's all gray, let's bring this up on top and take a look. You could certainly make an argument. You could argue this as a complementary, but it's also, you could see it as a triadic. Take a look. The blues, the oranges, those are fairly obvious. But look at the way some of these grays lean. Can you see here we have our orange, we have our blue, but these grays certainly lean, especially down here in this green direction. So interesting, but beautiful painting. These colors are so nice and the shapes are so interesting. Oh, a color scheme we didn't talk about. Let's talk about this. Once again, these can be argued. You could say it's complement because that's the blue in, but I think there's such an influence of yellow, of a mother color of yellow. I would say this is more analogous. So analogous is, let's say you're starting with this as your main color, and then you go around the color wheel here and here, or even here. You keep your colors all analogous or touching on the color wheel. And you can create some interesting things that way. This can be argued, of course, because there is some shots of blue in there, but overall it is a pretty analogous painting. Everything's in those ranges. Take a look at this painting by Alexei Belike. I don't know quite how to pronounce it, Russian artist. And look how much color, look how much pop is in this painting. But remember, all that pop and color is, this red. But then do notice how he's kept these colors in a far more muted gray area. They still have vibrancy and they lean blue and purple, but all these are far more in the muted gray area, which helps. If they're all competing, you're not going to look right there. And then look at this area. Look where he's, put these little spots of color in there to keep your eye moving around the painting. Bob Kuhn. Interesting, I think when you're looking at a painting like this versus a painting like that, look at how they're using color to feel what's important to them, the type of painting they want to paint, the type of light source, or this. Okay, coming back to that Kuhn. Dusty American plains, and really, really well done, I think, in keeping also in your value, keeping this value darker so it keeps your point of interest. And these birds flying back there, look at the value pulled down in here as well, while still being an interesting color. E. Charlton Fortune, one of the few early California Impressionists. Just interesting play on the blue, really saturating the blue shadows and giving this scene, once again, let's do some comparison. Look at this scene to this scene. Compare this, dusty American plains to California coast in maybe a cool type morning. Interesting play on how you can have color help tell the story. So we have to come back to this incredible painting by Jean-Paul Laurence. We talked about it in value. Let's look in color how well this red brings you in here. This is definitely your focal point, that strong value and the strongest vibrant color of red. But as we lead around, look at this green against red and this green against red and that green against red. Those are very distinct color choices and certainly was no accident in painting this masterful painting.